Hey, good morning. This is the Conservative Cat Show. So do appreciate you being here this morning. I took a break yesterday. I did a rerun of a Karl Marx show. The schools don't tell you how terrible of a guy Karl Marx actually was. His whole entire family hated him. His kids died because he neglected him, and he used his best friend, a best friend whose daddy was an owner of a company, and his best friend would pay for his existence. Karl Marx was a terrible person. So if you missed it, you can go to the archives, of course, and find the Karl Marx episode. They lied to you in school. They did not tell you the truth about Karl Marx and who he was, even as a person. So go find that. I was sick. I could not even talk yesterday, and I was coughing, and I said, I can't do it. And I plugged in some Karl Marx history for you. So today we are jumping right back into the news. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends, subscribe to the channel. We're almost 2,000 subscribers. I really want to get there before Christmas. Please tell your friends to subscribe. And always support the program by visiting patriotpumpenergy.com. Get your bottle of premium pre-workout today. And you can use the promo code Conservative Cat at checkout for $10 off. It's got 150 milligrams of caffeine, 2,500 milligrams of creatine. I swear by this stuff. No artificial colors, natural flavors, real good stuff. So it doesn't turn out like red, like your normal pre-workouts. You mix them and then they turn like a funky color. Sorry, I'm not putting Red 40 in our product. But Patriot Pump Energy, it's more than just an energy drink. It is a ministry. We try to help young men in gyms locally get their hands on this product and help improve their physical man. But we also try to dedicate some of the funds, the profits, towards hosting things like Bible study with young men in these gyms, because I think too often you get young men who find themselves in the gym and improving their lives, but they're not doing it for Christ. They're getting very ripped in the gym and they're doing it for themselves, which is great. But we want to redirect young men and to improve in making this improvement, yes, but doing it for the Lord. Do all things for the Lord, right? Your purpose is for the Lord. The show is for the Lord. And I've got to break down a few things this morning. Piers Morgan absolutely humiliated by Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes turns the tables here in the most epic meltdown ever. I saw Piers Morgan literally melting down on his show, talking about tampons, Hitler. So this was a pretty epic interview. I watched the whole thing. The interview, and then I listened to Nick Fuentes' reaction to the interview. So we're going to break it down. I don't agree with Nick Fuentes. I am a Christian Zionist. Okay? Nick Fuentes is not a Zionist. What is a Zionist? A Zionist is the belief that Israel should remain a Jewish state and they can be a nation. It's a nation for the Israelis for a certain ethnicity. Now, I don't know if that's like crazy. I mean, I'm going to get to Genesis here this morning and the Tower of Babel. God's all about nations. And, he's the one who gave us all these different languages. And, I'm not opposed other countries. I don't know why here in America we're like vehemently opposed. I don't know if it's our white guilt or whatever it is here in America, our Western civilization, guilt, shame. But God forbid we say, hey, this is an English-speaking nation, a Christian nation. People get really bent out of shape over that. You want Yemen, Somalia to be, Muslim nations, Somalian-speaking nation. Nobody even bats an eye. Like, if you go, and I was actually researching this, if you go to the Middle East, you have to research it, like their customs, cultural customs. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in a whole lot of trouble. So if you go to purchase tickets to go visit the Middle East, say Dubai, Yemen, it's like a category 4 Dubai is like a category 1. Like, hey, stay on alert is category 1, category 4, don't go. But if you don't research their cultural norms, and if you don't attempt to speak their language while you're there, you're going to be either jailed or hurt. In cases like Yemen, they're gonna kill you, and they don't like other cultures coming in, and they are very clear that, hey, this is a Somalian speaking nation, or this is a Muslim nation. These are our cultural norms. Like, if I were to even go to, I would have to abide by the Muslim norm, covering my ankles. I was actually looking into going to a trip with my congregation to Israel, and there's a part there in Israel that is very close to an Arab type nation. And I had to, on my list, pack a long skirt, something that would cover my ankles, and abide by their cultural norms. Only here in America is that like wrong, where we, like, if I say, hey, this should be an only English speaking nation, people are like, you're a racist. Whoa, if you go anywhere else in the country, or in the world, they're going to expect you to abide by their cultural norms and even speak a little bit of their language while you're there. So I bring that up because, like, Nick Fuentes isn't a Zionist. I think that is the most conservative belief or Christian belief that you could have, that nations are nations and they have cultural norms and sovereignty. And I don't agree with Nick on everything. He's not a Zionist. But this is a pretty epic takedown of Piers Morgan, and Piers Morgan got humiliated. So we're going to get to that. We're going to get to Governor J.B. Pritzker. He is an illegal immigrant's best friend. He signed a new anti-ICE law, and I'm going to break down this law for you here on the Conservative Cat Show. I also want to get to a Chicago church where they zip-tied Jesus. Look, and people don't know this. The reason why ICE uses zip ties, actually, that's more humane probably than handcuffs. It's softer and not as tight. But they're using zip ties because handcuffs are A, expensive, B, they've run out. Okay, and they're not purchasing anymore. And they're using zip ties as a means of, saving taxpayer dollars. But also they're just running out. There's so many illegals. Thank you, Joe Biden. Where they've run out of handcuffs. Okay, so I don't know where this came from, where the zip tie thing is like inhumane. It's actually not. I don't know if you've ever been in zip ties versus handcuffs, but I would imagine zip ties are more comfortable. So I don't know what's so inhumane about zip tying criminals. So they put a gas mask on Mary as well. And this was like, sorry guys, I'm still getting over this cold. It's very annoying. So they put zip ties on baby Jesus, and then they put a gas mask on Mary and Joseph. And it's really a disgusting protest against ICE, this church, against Trump and ICE. So we're going to talk about that. But let's start with Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, and then I promise I'll get into Piers Morgan and the Nick Fuentes thing. So Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker continues to thumb his nose at any attempt to improve conditions in his state. So that's what Trump is doing. He's just trying to improve conditions in the state of Illinois with the National Guard. It is violence riddled. Chicago is just violence riddled. And he's doing anything to kneecap the policies of our duly elected president of the United States, President Donald Trump. He is kneecapping these policies. And I think that the Trump administration has been too soft. Okay, bring the National Guard in crazy amounts, crazy numbers. Start arresting Governor J.B. Pritzker and Brandon Johnson. This is a clear rebellion at this point, and I don't think anybody would be shocked if you cuffed JB for his open rebellion. So the governor, he freaked out when Trump sent a very small number of National Guardsmen to Chicago in October. Okay, so JB freaked out. And really what Trump did, it was after a particularly bloody weekend. That's when he sent the National Guardsmen. And JB has now taken it a step further. Usually he just freaks out on the media, calls Trump a fascist, whatever. But now he's taken it a step further and he's actually signed legislation. So this is House Bill 1312. It was a measure designed to make it even harder for U.S. ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, to do their job. Okay, this is what HB 1312 is all about. Governor J.B. Pritzker signed it into law, doubling down on the sanctuary policies. Like, we already had sanctuary policies. It's the Trust Act. I've told you my interpretation of the Trust Act is very different than liberals or even some Republicans, sheriffs. I don't believe that the Trust Act applies to criminal illegal aliens or criminal activity. Okay, the Trust Act, the way I explain it, would be, hey, you can't try to get local law enforcement to do the job of ICE. So what does that look like? Let's say Maria works at Rivian. She's here on a work visa, but her work visa expires, or she leaves the job at Rivian. That's violating conditions of her stay, of her visa's stay here in the United States. It's up to ICE to go investigate that. You can't try to get law enforcement to go interview Maria to see if she still works at Rivian. You can't, get law enforcement to do your job as federal government. Okay, that's how I read the Trust Act. Now, how sheriffs around the state interpret it is that you can't help ICE at all. Even if, let's say, for example, this happened in Coles County, an illegal immigrant was in the car, drove over the middle line there, killed a sitting Coles County board member and his wife, Mike and Gail Clayton. He drove over that middle line, intoxicated, and killed them. And then there were two illegals. There was a driver, and then there was the passenger. You have them in custody. They committed a crime. You know they're here illegally because they didn't present paperwork or their visa or their work visa. They didn't prove that they were here in the country legally. When you obtained identification in the processing of their arrest, you know they're here illegally. They committed an illegal act. Some sheriffs, and in this case, they believe that, hey, this isn't our job to inform ICE that he's here in our detention facility or in our jail. Okay, that's how they interpret the Trust Act. Most sheriffs across the state. I think that's stupid and ignorant to interpret it that way. Anyway, now this bill takes it a step further than the Trust Act, which is the sanctuary state policy. Okay, it blocks civil immigration arrests in courthouses, hospitals, schools, daycares, and sensitive locations, while giving immigrants the legal right to sue federal agents for alleged rights violations. Illegal immigrants don't have rights here. Felons, U.S. citizens who commit felonies don't have certain rights. For example, to carry a firearm, Second Amendment rights. I don't even think that they're allowed to vote in elections. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I'm pretty sure that's the case. But they don't, we don't even give our own U.S. citizens certain rights after they've committed crimes. Okay, an illegal immigrant has no rights after committing the crime of entering the country illegally. Okay, they've got no rights here in this country. They're not citizens of this country. Okay, so silly law. That the law blocks civil immigration arrests at courthouses. So what would happen? So say, ICE, and the example that I gave where this illegal immigrant, he was intoxicated, went over the middle line, killed Mike and Gail. Mike was a Coles County, Illinois board member, killed him. Say he goes to the courthouse to answer for his crimes, drinking and driving. What ICE would probably do would, they know that this guy is illegal. they'd sit outside of the courtroom and await his exit from the courtroom, and then they would go in and deport him and serve him the deportation order, zip tie him, and take him out of there. For example, hospitals, same case there with Mike and Gail. Say that illegal had to go to the hospital, in which I think he did for like minor injuries. He was fine. ICE, could be made aware. Somebody could have tipped them off. Hey, there was an illegal immigrant here at the hospital. And then ICE would come and deport said illegal from the hospital, schools, daycares, sensitive locations. Okay, so that's what the law is. Illinois taxpayers are footing the bill for legal defenses. How are they footing the bill through that? It's really fascinating. They take taxpayer dollars, they funnel it through the comptroller's office in the form of a vendor payment, and then they give vendor payments to nonprofit organizations like the Illinois Coalition of Immigrant Refugee Rights or whatever. And that is like a legal defense operation for illegals. So your tax dollars are going for their legal defense, for their attorneys. It's going towards administrative costs. Of course, obviously, the vendor payments, the comptroller to issue those tax dollars to said nonprofit organizations that represent illegal immigrants. Like, you're paying for the comptroller's office to do all of this. All while residents, your needs, Illinois residents' needs, take a back seat. You've got needs. Wouldn't you like legal defense services paid for by the government? Right. You don't get that. This is unfair, and it's not sustainable. And it's clear the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois, they are prioritizing sanctuary policies over the needs of taxpayers and citizens. Every dollar spent defending these policies in court, the administrative costs, this is obviously probably going to be challenged in court. There's going to be administrative costs with that to try to defend these policies in court. Every resource allocated towards housing and supporting illegal immigrants while they await trial, the legal defense paid for by tax dollars. The most legal defense, they challenge that deportation order, which is just silly because the deportation order clearly, is signed by a judge. When we find out, when that judge finds out, and when ICE finds out that, hey, Maria's work visa has expired and she's here in the country illegally, and then that's what generates the deportation order. So to try to dispute that is just, silly. Residents deserve transparency. All of this comes right out of our pockets, by the way. Taxpayer dollars towards legal defenses, towards administrative costs, towards defending these policies in courts when people inevitably sue over these policies. We deserve transparency, accountability, and a government that puts our people first, puts Americans first. If leaders continue to drain resources while ignoring the needs of our communities, it may be time to take legal action or arrest these people. That's what I'm saying. I think that the Trump administration, this is an open rebellion, okay, what Pritzker is doing. And I think it's time to hold the city officials and the state officials, including Governor J.B. Pritzker, accountable. I don't know why Pritzker hasn't gone in and zip-tied Pritzker yet. Okay. The law is shielding illegal immigrants from ICE. The Illinois law, the new Illinois law, near courthouses, hospitals, university campuses, daycare centers, it gives people the ability to sue officers, by the way, who believe that their constitutional rights were violated. Like I said, they don't have any constitutional rights. They're here illegally. They're not U.S. citizens. Our own U.S. citizens, once they commit crimes, felon cannot vote, cannot hold a firearm, or cannot own a firearm. So, yeah, this belief that your constitutional rights were violated, silly, because you have none. You're here illegally. So this goes into effect immediately. JB, like California Governor Gavin Newsom, they continually blast Trump and anyone who thinks illegal immigration is in fact illegal. And they both ignore the fact that their states are in decline and their residents don't feel safe there. Why? Because they're not safe. Okay, they continue to paint the president as a cold-hearted monster. Really what he's trying to do is just clean up the massive mess that Joe Biden left. I remember when these sanctuary city leaders like JB and Gavin Newsom were crying, they were bitching and moaning about the illegals being shipped up to their cities and how they didn't have the resources for them. So now all of a sudden Trump is trying to address that massive mess where Joe Biden said, let everyone in. You know, he's trying to address those let everyone in immigration policies. And now they're all bent out of shape and they're calling him a cold-hearted dictator or whatever. Here's what Governor J.B. Pritzker said, quote, with my signature today on this law, we are protecting people and institutions that belong here in Illinois. Dropping your kid off at daycare, going to the doctor, or attending classes should not be a life-altering task. Pritzker goes on. He says, Illinois, in the face of cruelty and intimidation, has chosen solidarity and support. Donald Trump, Kristi Noem, Senior Patrol Security or Border Patrol Security Officer Gregory Bavino have tried to appeal to our lesser instincts. But the best of us are standing up to the worst of them. That's what he says in a statement, Governor J.B. Pritzker. Okay, so JB is putting on this high, mighty act. Okay, and he's ignoring the women who are being trafficked by these illegal immigrants. He sex trafficked by these illegal immigrants who have made their way to the United States through Biden's open border policies. Okay, these sex traffickers. He's ignoring the criminal illegal aliens like Laken Riley, Jocelyn Nungari, and here in our own state, Illinois, Emma Schaefer. Okay, these are young women who were brutalized, killed by illegal immigrants. Okay, Gabriel Calixto here in Illinois allegedly stabbed and murdered Emma Schaefer. And, you know, we've got the truck drivers. I just told you about Gail and Mike, husband and wife. Mike was serving his community as a public servant. He was a Coles County board member. Okay, you've got these truck drivers with commercial driver's licenses that should have never been issued to them. They're creating these horrific accidents, drinking and driving in the case of Mike and Gail. The list goes on. I could go on and on and on. He puts on this high and mighty act, JB, but he completely ignores the women who have been victimized, the people, the families who have been victimized, like a man and wife, like Mike and Gail. I'd imagine they were grandparents. I don't know for sure, but I'd imagine they had family, right? And you take out a husband and a wife, and then you take out a county board member, that devastates a community. GOP Representative Mary Miller says that the governor's action are a betrayal of the state. Yes, she says, quote, on X this morning, JB signed a bill yet again, an attempt to shield illegal immigrants from deportation. It is a complete and total betrayal of the rule of law and every innocent victim in Illinois. Yeah. So if it's a betrayal of the rule of law, what does that mean? That means JB is a criminal. What does that mean, Donald Trump? That means you have to go in and arrest him. Okay, this is open rebellion at this point. And I don't know if the White House has the cojones to do it. I don't know. I thought Trump had the cojones to do the job. He's just not doing it. The White House, they had an opinion on the matter, but this was kind of, I want to see action. I want to see JB taken out in cuffs. This is open rebellion at this point. So here's what the White House said. They said if Pritzker, the slob, focused on fixing crime in his own state instead of defending illegal criminal aliens, Illinois residents would be much safer, said White House spokeswoman Abigail Jackson in a statement to Fox News Digital. Cracking down on crime and deporting dangerous criminally illegal aliens should not be a partisan issue, but Democrats suffering from TDS are trying to make it one, all at the expense of the Americans they were elected to serve. So what Pritzker also forgets is that the American people who voted this president in, a large part due to his vow to do something about the disaster good old Joe left behind. Like that is what Pritzker is forgetting here. The American people spoke loudly at a national level and said, hey, we want Trump to do something about this. Obviously, because Trump vowed to do something about it. And, Newsom, JB, they use the words like cruel over and over and over again. But really, he's just describing himself, JB. And he's an open rebellion. I think it warrants cuffing JB. I really do. And like the White House statement was like, yeah, I mean, it's good. Like Democrats are suffering from TDS. Okay, yeah, we get it. Now let's do something about it, White House. Let's go arrest the guy for being an open rebellion and creating laws that are not in connection with federal law. Like you're openly, like we are the United States of America. Like I'm all for states' rights, but this is an open rebellion of federal immigration laws that we've established and that Congress, an elected Congress, has voted on. Okay, if you don't like the law, change the law. The law is that you can't enter the country, you can't border jump. You have to go through a process. So, yeah, let's shift gears. I do want to get to Nick Fuentes and Piers Morgan today. Welcome back to the Conservative Cat Show. I took a break yesterday. I did the Karl Marx episode. If you guys haven't seen it, I definitely would like you guys to go to the archives, check it out. Karl Marx was a terrible human being. He killed his kids, neglected his kids so badly that they died. He abused this friendship that he had with a friend. His friend paid his rent, lived in his friend's apartment. This friend was the son of a business owner, of a large company. And Karl Marx was a terrible, terrible human being, had barnacles all over his back, was terrible with hygiene, not liked by anybody. His school teachers thought he was combative and aggressive for no reason. So if you guys missed that, definitely worth checking out in the archives of the Conservative Cat Show. Now here, we don't bow to mainstream media. We don't worship the media priests. I don't bow down to mainstream media. And I just call it the way it is, call it the way I see it. I call balls and strikes. And I'm going to do that here with Piers Morgan and Nick Fuentes. Like I said, I'm a Christian Zionist. Nick Fuentes is not a Zionist. Zionist is simply the belief that, hey, Jewish people should have their own nation. Much like I believe that Christians should have our own nation. And I think that it's been established. It's America. This is a Christian nation. I'm a Christian nationalist. So I don't think that it's wrong for Somalian to want to have their religion, Islam, be the primary religion in their country. We see how well that goes. And they want people to be Somalian speaking. Hell, they want people to marry their cousins there. It's 69 or 60%, 59%. The marriages there are of extended families, brothers getting married to their sisters, cousins getting married to each other. Quite literally, a majority of marriages there are incestual, or like quite literally incest. So whatever, that I am a nationalist. I think that America should be English speaking and should be Christian nationalist. And we've established that. Much like I believe that Israel is a Jewish state and they should be entitled to that country. Why? Because the old covenant. Okay, God said that your descendants will have this nation, a land of milk and honey. And then he promised Ishmael, which is why I'm not opposed to the hundreds of millions, 300 million Arabs having their nation surrounding Israel, because God gave a promise to Ishmael in the Bible that, hey, yeah, your descendants are going to have many nations, but not Israel, you see. So Piers Morgan, he thinks that shouting over Nick Fuentes and trying to do these gotcha type questions was a form of journalism, and I'm just not here for it. Nick Fuentes and I probably don't have a ton in common, but I think he's funny. I think his show is very funny. He's got this dry sort of humor, sarcastic humor that you can't really pick up on, and that's his whole kind of shtick. I think he's very funny, and he's got something right that, hey, Jesus Christ is king, and we've lost ourselves over the years, and we've like shamed ourselves into like not wanting to be Western, have a Western culture or Christian culture here in America. And that's not the case. If you go anywhere else in the country, I mean, even on our own, like airport or TSA, I think it's TSA, Department of Homeland Security, when you go and travel to these Middle Eastern countries, they prep you on their cultural norms, and you can download PDFs on how to adapt to that country's cultural norms, so that way you don't get killed. Like, you will get killed for not appropriating, culturally appropriating to that country's norms. And America's the outlier in this. So, yeah, I believe in a lot of what Nick Fuentes says, not all of it. Obviously, I'm a Christian Zionist, if you guys watch the show. And I think where Nick and I are at odds. I'm a Protestant. He's Catholic. Okay, I think that's really where it kind of stems from, as a theological, the old covenant versus the new covenant. He is of the belief that the new covenant replaces the old covenant. And, you know, as Jesus said, I am a fulfillment of the prophets and the law. I haven't come to replace the law. So there's people out there with a belief that the new covenant replaces the old covenant, and that's just not how covenants work. That's not how God works. Once he says he's going to do something, he does it. So anyway, let me get to the interview. Let's get into it. I don't want to get into a whole bunch of theology today. Eventually, maybe I will in a separate show. But here we go. Piers Morgan, 60 years old, by the way. Decades in journalism business, interviewing business. And, you know, his first move is pretending tampons aren't gross to try to trip Nick up in some sort of gotcha. So take a listen to this. That's where we're at here with this interview. This interview was pretty funny. Mainstream journalism in 2025. We've got Piers Morgan talking to Nick Fuentes about tampons and trying to get him to say that tampons aren't gross, and some sort of way of standing in solidarity with women. Piers Morgan is trying to say that tampons aren't gross, or that he wouldn't mind holding tampons in his man purse to give to a friend or whatever. Take a listen to this. This is just hilarious.
I don't suppose you've ever seen a tampon, have you?
Gross. Absolutely not.
You think tampons are gross?
Yeah, they're filled with period blood. Yeah, it's kind of gross.
Wow.
Are you into that? You like that?
Have you ever seen
a lot of tampons?
I don't think you've ever seen it, have you?
I've seen them. I've seen them before.
You've been that close to a woman? Really?
No, I've seen him. Look, I used to live with women, so I've seen him around the house.
I bet you've seen videos, haven't you?
What? What are we doing here, Piers?
I'm not sure.
You really hate that.
I'm not sure.
You're
Nick.
more impressed that I'm a misogynist than you are about anything. It's
not
very
really.
revealing.
I don't suppose you've ever seen a tampon.
Okay, I think Piers, what he was doing here on a show, which is ironically named Uncensored, Piers Morgan had come out multiple times prior to this interview and said that he wasn't ever going to have a Nick Fuentes on, that he was just too controversial. Ironic that you name your show Uncensored and you won't have the most censored person in America, objectively. Nick Fuentes, I don't believe, is still allowed to have like YouTube or anything like that. He's on Rumble and on X now. Those are free speech platforms, and that's why you're hearing about Nick Fuentes more and more. I've never really even heard of him up until 2025, probably because he's been censored. So I haven't watched much of Nick Fuentes' stuff until this year. And like I said, Christian Zionist. I'm of the belief that, hey, Jewish people deserve a Jewish state, much like Christians. This is our state, right? This is our nation, Christian nation, America. So Nick here is going back and forth about tampons with Piers Morgan because apparently the peak form of being a pro-woman is giving out tampons. And if you guys were to watch the entire interview, and I did, Piers Morgan says he doesn't mind handing out tampons to his lady friends. Weird. Okay. Anytime I mention tampons, like I think my brother had to go buy me tampons one time when I was in school. And he was so embarrassed. I remember him like coming home and saying like, how dare you like do that? I couldn't go. And he like picked him up for me. And he goes, how dare you make me do that? And I was like, look, I needed them, you know? Like this is young men. Nick Fuentes, I think, is like 27 years old. He's my age. Like, yeah, most young men have the belief that tampons are gross. Okay. Most women believe that tampons are gross, and it's just like not like whether or not you give a female friend a tampon is not a testament to how much you love women or if you're a misogynist or not. Anyway, this was like a TV stunt. He didn't want to have a real argument about the differences between men and women. And I'm sure his producers were shouting in his earpiece here, Piers Morgan, say something shocking. Call him a misogynist, ask him if he would give a tampon to a female friend. You know, like that's what this was. It was a stunt. And here's a moment that broke the internet. He started asking Nick if he was gay. And I'll just play the clip and then I'll explain, you know, bits and pieces of this interview.
Just to clear up one of the many theories about you, I've no idea what the answer is and you haven't got to answer. But are you actually attracted to women?
I am attracted to women.
You're not gay?
No. But I will say that women are very difficult to be around.
Okay.
So there's that.
And do you think they should have the right to vote?
I do not. No, absolutely not.
They should stay at home?
Well, yeah, absolutely.
So basically, you're just a misogynist old dinosaur, aren't you? For a young guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I know I'm the boomer. I know I'm the boomer here, but actually, you're a 27-year-old dinosaur, aren't you? Aren't you, Nick Fuentes? All women.
I am.
All women are annoying. All women grow old. They all get fat. Says the guy. Have you ever had sex?
No, absolutely not.
Wow. Says the guy who's never got laid.
So bizarre. Okay, so let me break this down for you. So yeah, this have you ever had sex? No. Wow, says the guy who's never gotten laid. So you know, which isn't misogynist, the belief that women should stay home, the belief that women shouldn't have the right to vote. And I'll break that down. Even women back in that time period when they were fighting to obtain the right to vote, there were women, largely, I think it was decided by one vote at the time to allow women the right to vote. Women were pushing for women not to get the right to vote. So it's not misogynist to say that, yeah, some women are annoying. It's not misogynist to say that, yeah, women shouldn't be voting. These things are not misogynist. And like, we are living in 2025. This is no longer 2015. People believe that there are, my generation, the Zoomers, and this guy is a boomer. We are of the belief that you guys really screwed it up. And I love my boomers, right? There's some good boomers, bad boomers. But these liberal boomers, the 60s, hippies, whatever, they grew up and they really didn't fight for our country. They didn't fight for these things like men and women are different. Hey, we are a Christian nation. We should abstain from sex. So to get to the sex thing, Piers, he says, have you ever had sex? No. Wow, says a guy who's never gotten laid. You're all about, talking about women not voting and women being annoying, and you've never gotten laid. Like Piers Morgan, he claims to be the champion of feminism because, he's willing to give a tampon to a female friend of his and keep tampons on him to hand out to women, which is just weird. Women don't run up and ask men for tampons. Okay, that's never going to happen. And you're really just like gaslighting people into thinking that you're like pro woman by saying that you wouldn't mind handing a tampon to a female. Anyway, most men find that weird. Most women find that weird. Okay, and he says that he's a champion of women's rights, right? And then he decides to mock a young guy, for not having sex, and not having sex is like something to be mocked. Okay, this is the same class of people. Piers Morgan comes from a media class of people, media personalities who have spent the last decade insisting on sex positivity, sleeping with whomever you want, body positivity, don't shame people's lifestyles, don't judge others' intimacy. Like, he comes from that crowd, Piers Morgan. But the moment somebody chooses self-control, discipline, an alternative lifestyle, and like Nick Fuentes, he's talked about this before, he can't really go out and just date people because he's the most censored person in America, already painted as a white or like a white supremacist. He's been on, no flight lists. Okay, can't fly, come and go from America, or come and go as he pleases on American Airlines, and travel throughout the country, let alone internationally. Like, that's really hard. I'd imagine in the dating world. Like, who are you gonna find? And he's a Catholic of the strong belief that you don't sleep with anybody until you're married. Like, suddenly, shaming is back on the menu. I thought that we were told not to shame people and judge others' intimacy, but here's Piers Morgan doing just that and shaming him, which I find fascinating. And then in the interview, there was also this moment where he says, Nick, are you a racist? And he says, yes. Yes, I'm a racist. Isn't that what the left wants you to proclaim and say all the time? Like, that you are inherently racist? That is what Nick was saying. Like, yes, I am racist. We all are. That's what he was saying. And like, he tried to be like, oh, gotcha. You admitted you were a racist. Isn't that like what the left has been forcing us to say this entire time? It's just fascinating. Here's another clip. I think that's that one. This is the one about racism. And Piers Morgan debates Nick Fuentes on this topic about the different types of ethnicities that commit crime. And this was just a sheer math argument that Nick was trying to present here, and Piers wanted nothing to do with it. Take a look.
It's the vast majority of the mass shootings.
I'm sure it's white people.
Right. So how do you feel about that?
I think that white people do more antisocial violence. I think black people participate in more gang violence. I think that's the difference.
What's the difference to the victims?
There's no difference to the victim, but it's a different kind of crime. And it's a different proportion also. Do you know what percentage of white people are school shooters?
I know that the vast majority of mass shootings in schools in America this century were perpetrated by young white men. And
what proportion of what proportion?
I'm curious.
What proportion?
I'm curious whether your advice would be to people who have kids in these schools.
Is my mic working?
What
proportion?
Should they avoid white people at school? Should people with the kids at school avoid young white men at school?
No.
Okay.
Do you know what per capita means? Do you know proportionality? There are more black people proportionally that engage in violent crime or are involved in gangs, especially in these major cities, than there are white people that are school shooters compared to the entire white population. And everybody understands that.
Two-thirds of mass shootings at school perpetrated by white people.
But what proportion of white men commit school shootings? That's the question.
I've just told you. It's 60 to 65% of school shootings by white people.
You're telling me what proportion of school shootings are committed by white people. I'm saying what proportion of white people have committed school shootings. Are you playing dumb or are you just not that smart?
What difference does that make to the children lying dead on the ground?
See, now you want to jump on the victims. The difference is you're asking, would you fear white people or black people? And that's the difference. The difference is
what I'm saying to you is by your logic, if we now have agreed that the vast majority of mass shootings in schools are committed by white people and predominantly young white men, then presumably your advice would be to avoid young white men because they perpetrate these massacres. But it won't be because they're white, right?
So are you playing dumb or are you actually dumb?
Maybe
it's
I'm
about
dumb.
proportionality.
Maybe I'm dumb.
You are because well, I don't think you are dumb. I think you're smart actually, but you're deliberately avoiding per capita. And everybody knows that's the difference. What proportion of white men are school shooters? It's probably 0.00001%. What proportion of black men have committed violent crimes? It's probably like 5%. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but it's very high. And I would add to that, even as it concerns schools, why do you think parents pay a super high property tax to live in a school district where there's white people? Because they know that if they go to the black school, it's going to be the Bloods and the Crips. It's going to be gangs. It's going to be, you talk about school shootings. Nobody talks about all the school shootings that are committed by gangbangers in and around the school and all the other violence that's associated with that. I mean, these schools in the south side of Chicago, it's just not livable.
I have an answer for you.
Okay. Yeah, Nick can definitely handle himself. I like that comment in the comment section. Clearly, Nick can handle himself. Subscribe to the channel. This is the Conservative Cat Show. Earlier, I had played a clip. Here's this liberal, Piers Morgan, knocking on a young man, 27 years old, waiting until marriage, doesn't want to enter the dating scene. And I think that resonates with a lot of young men. My brother hasn't really dated anybody ever. He's 26. Okay. Why? Because women are annoying. Feminists, feminazis, you open the door for them. They say, how dare you? I can do that myself. Or if you don't open the door for them, they say, how dare you not open the door for me? Okay. It's very hard for a man to enter the dating scene in 2025. And he's practicing, Nick, as a Catholic, self-disciplined or self-controlled discipline, this alternative lifestyle. And the left has for years said, hey, don't shame people's lifestyles. Don't judge others' intimacy. Love is love. You guys know this. But oh God, like here's Piers Morgan shaming him. So shame is back on the table or back on the menu here when you practice things like self-control, discipline, or if a man says a woman is too difficult or that the scene is a little too difficult right now in this time that we're living in, he's a misogynist. If a man wants a traditional life, that's hate. God forbid he wants a traditional life where, that's hate. It's not an option where he, practices celibacy. chooses celibacy. He mocks him for that, Piers Morgan. And, remember, this is coming from a class of people, a media class, or a generation, maybe. I don't know. I love my boomer parents. My boomer parents are great. I think that there are boomers who maybe were hippies, or they grew up and, and most of their marriages are open relationships. Actually, Piers Morgan, his wife, took a vacation, and this was plastered all over tabloids, took a vacation and took a break from their marriage. That was plastered all over tabloids. I don't know if there's any truth to that. But, most people in this generation, a lot of them, some of their marriages, ended because of affairs, or they created open relationships. Nick isn't being the weird one here when it comes to that. And now I want to get to this clip where he talks about race. And Nick starts talking about crime data and per capita rates, demographic breakdowns. And Piers, who's interviewed world leaders, Piers Morgan, suddenly he doesn't understand per capita or what that means, or he's just being stupid here. Because, the numbers might look racist. Look, I think that this was Irina Zarutska, where she got stabbed in the neck by a black man. I'm going to be honest with you, knowing the crime data, and if this is just, hey, we live in a world where I know crime data, I'm not going to make the mistake Irina did. It's not her fault, but I'm going to wear my head on a swivel, and I'm not going to sit next to the black man that looks a certain way, baggy pants, hood up. Why? Because everything about crime data, per capita rates tell me that, hey, if I sit there, might not come out with my life. Statistically speaking, that's not crazy to say. And, Nick, in the interview, he even brings up that black people know how violent the black community is. Black people get it. Okay. And black people are more often the victims than white people in these violent crimes. So it's black on black crime. Nick gets it because why? He lives in Chicago. He's seen it. Piers, he doesn't want to acknowledge per capita because that doesn't fit the narrative, and it might appear racist if I say that black people per capita commit majority of the violent crimes. Okay, and this is the trick. If numbers point to a real problem, you're supposed to pretend math is the villain, right? How dare you, bring these numbers up? That math should be villainized. But I live in reality. You live in reality. Conservatives live in reality, and we don't live in a fairy tale where facts have feelings. I want to get to this clip. This was one where, Nick had said, do you think women, I won't play the clip again because I think I already played it. He said, Piers Morgan asked, should they vote women? He goes, are you gay? No, women are difficult to be around in 2025. Let's have a conversation about that. But no, Piers didn't want to have a conversation. And then he goes, should they vote? And I want to bring this up. And he calls Nick a dinosaur for being a misogynistic dinosaur because he believes that women should stay at home, or that they shouldn't be voting. Okay, so whether you agree with that traditional view or not, now I agree with it. I don't think women should be voting. And a lot of women back during the suffrage movement took that position. Okay, so that's a more traditional take, and I understand if you don't hold it. But the important part is this. He was talking about cultural structure, not personal hatred of women. When he says women are difficult, he's talking about the cultural structure that we find ourselves in 2025 and how women have become difficult to be around because they're not really women anymore. They're women pretending to be men, and they're not very good at being men. So it's very hard to date in 2025. And Piers is tone deaf. We're living in 2025. This isn't 2015 anymore, where your insults of calling me racist and misogynist are going to hurt me. So buckle up, because I've got history here for you. Piers, he tried to pretend that he didn't understand the difference about what Nick was talking about when he says that women are difficult. He says women shouldn't vote. It's not out of personal hatred for women. This is a larger cultural structure that Nick is talking about. And if you were to listen to his show, you'd understand. Or if he was just willing to have a conversation with Nick, but he wasn't. He was just trying to play gotcha and get him to admit that he's a racist, which is what the left wants us to do. So like, or that they say like, you're inherently racist and you are racist. And that's what Nick did. He said, yes, I'm a racist. Because yeah, you're going to call me that either way. And you know, I think we're all racist. And Nick acknowledging that shows that he's more open-minded than a Piers Morgan or a liberal. Anyway, so buckle up. Here is the history that the modern activists like to leave out. The revisionists, the history revisionists leave out during the women's suffrage movement. This was not a unanimous march to the ballot box. Okay. It's not. The truth is that it was decided by one vote. And, you know, this woman was married to the guy that voted on it, and she urged him to vote a certain way. But there was a huge number of women, organized, loud, influential, and they fought not to get the right to vote. Okay. They called themselves during this time period the anti-women or the Anti-Suffrage Women's Association. Okay. And they existed all over the country. You had chapters all over the country, and they weren't brainwashed housewives, okay, in aprons. These women were educated, they were articulate, and they understood, and they thought that the right to vote actually would hurt society, not help it. So what did they say? These women all over the country at the time. They said, and they argued, that the family was the fundamental political unit, not the individual. Okay. And that husbands and wives were supposed to operate as a team. Okay. As opposed to operating as an individual when it comes to voting. And adding a second vote wasn't empowerment. They said that it was division, and that they were dividing families and injecting politics into a marriage. Okay. And you see that now it's hard to, you have to have that conversation about politics before you enter a marriage. But then it gets hard, you know, because things change, and your marriage could be divided on a political issue, and you might vote for this guy and your husband might vote for that guy, and it causes an issue in the marriage. And they injected politics into this family unit, this fundamental political unit, by giving women, or wanting to give women, this right to vote. So women warned that if some weren't, some women weren't in a large, a huge number of women. Okay, this was not a straight march to the ballot box. As you were pitched in school. This was fought, and it came down to one singular vote. They believed that women, if they were dragged into the same political mud fights as men, it would cheapen what they call the civilizing influence that women had in the home and in the community. So they understood that they were more influential. Women were more influential in the home, in the community, in the church, okay, politically, than they would ever be in this space where men were, you know, in these political mud fights or engaging on the political stage. Like, they had more of a say at home. Okay, so husband comes home, loves his wife, loves his kids. uh, there's a political mud fight that he's participating in, rather than she getting a right to vote per se, or doing it at an individual level, she'd talk to the husband. And, that home structure, you are the leader of the home when you're a woman, right? The domestic engineer, and there's a respect once husband comes home, and you can influence husband. The civilizing influence is what they called it. And they had it in the home and in their churches. And when they spoke to their husbands about these issues, they were more apt to listen. Now that we're all on the same platform, it's kind of just a mud fight, and we're all just throwing food at each other, kind of, right? And it's all just fighting, and women aren't taken seriously in politics. They just aren't, because there's not that civilizing influence, that hold that you have on men when they come into the home and come into really your space, which is the home as a woman. After, working, you had more influence being at home, and when the men would come home. Now you're all on the same playing field, and, just biologically, women are quieter than men. Your voice is higher pitched. It's not going to be heard at a scientifical level. Okay, like a scientific level, like men are louder than women objectively. So you're not going to be heard as much. Okay. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. So they believed that their power came from influence, stability, moral authority, not through standing in a line at a polling place. Okay. It really diminished this powerful influence that you had as a woman in a home, and as I like to call myself, the domestic engineer, right? You had this influence, and they gave it all up to stand in line at a polling place, which was stupid. So many women feared that the vote would make women more accountable to government and less accountable to their own family. So that's another thing, is women serving in public political office. You are not, you are a public servant to the masses, right? Or the people, we the people. And you're not necessarily accountable to your family unit, your political unit. You're more accountable to the masses rather than your political unit. And what women at the time feared was that, hey, you're going to be accountable to, the masses and to the government, and you're not going to be accountable to your own family. And imagine that. We've got big government today, the exact same big government creep everyone complains about today. This was predicted over 100 years ago. Okay, that women being more accountable to we the people, they abandoned their families. They gave less priority to their families and their political voice. And now you have like big government bureaucracies, and the women of the time believed that would happen. Okay, so history is very one-sided in these textbooks. They present it as it was a big march, that women marched towards their right to vote. And that's not true. Most women at the time did not want this. So to call Nick Fuentes a dinosaur or a misogynist is very silly. There were millions of women who said, no, thanks. I want to keep my political power that I have at home, and I want to be representative of my family, and through my family, and through virtue, and through raising the next generation. And once you take them out of the home, where they're not raising their children, then you get children who are politically confused. They don't know how to vote, and they don't vote. And we're all wondering, scratching our heads, and we're like, man, the voter turnout is down. Yeah, it's because kids don't understand any of it, because there is no political influence in the home. Okay, you're outsourcing the politics and the political influence to a litany of teachers who have a variety of political views. Your kid could have 8 teachers a day, and they all have various political views. And they're never going to feel truly represented because they don't know where they stand. So they don't participate in voting. So this brought down actually voter turnout. I believe it's brought down voter turnout, allowing women the right to vote or having them go and sit in these polling lines. They had far more political influence in the home, and you could raise up the next generation and raise your children with strong political convictions, and they'd actually go out and vote. When you have children who have no political convictions, they're not going to go vote because they have a litany of political perspectives from their teachers, their various teachers that they spend most of their time with. So, yeah, to call somebody misogynist because they say, yeah, women shouldn't be voting. I'm like, what the hell? I mean, like, do you not know history? This was decided by one vote, and it really was just a woman who like had her husband's cojones in her purse. What I mean? So that whole chapter in history gets erased because it doesn't fit the narrative. That women, they stood in solidarity and marched to the ballot box. It gets erased, but it happened. Women, they fought like hell not to get the right to vote because they knew that their political influence was much stronger in the home, and that the family unit was a political unit, and you had control over that in your home. And now you've leveled everybody to the same playing field, and women, they don't get a voice really in politics anymore. They used to. Traditionalism wasn't forced on women. Okay, in many cases, it was defended by women. So Nick, when he says that he doesn't want women to vote, that's not misogynist. We live in reality, facts, history, figures over feelings. Now, I do want to get to this part of the interview. Nick Fuentes, he was questioned about Hitler. Okay, and this is where it gets fascinating. And he clarified on his show what he meant by Hitler is cool. And I'll play that clip as well. But this was a clip, and there's some language in this clip. I just want to be clear before I play it. Piers Morgan was asking Nick Fuentes about what he had said on his show about Nick being pro-Hitler or whatever. Hey, thanks for the super sticker. Appreciate it. There was a large female anti-suffrage movement. Large, like it literally came down to one vote. So yeah, I think the history revisionists, they have really erased this part of history where women fought for traditionalism. They fought for that influence to stay in the home, that political influence that they had, and they were inserting politics in marriages. And these women predicted what we're seeing today, where divorce rates are super high, marriages don't last, the voter turnout is extremely low because children aren't being politically influenced by mom in the home, because you inserted politics, and now they're out and they're participating. You give them the right to vote, now they're going to be politicians, and they're out serving we the people rather than serving the home politically. So let's take a listen to this. This was the Hitler bit. Here we go.
You think Hitler was very fucking cool?
Yes, I do.
One of them,
and I'm tired of pretending he's not.
Well,
to be honest,
this is the problem. You see, it's a bit like when you just say, you think Hitler was very fucking cool.
Okay, so that was Piers Morgan. Appreciate you guys being here. Subscribe to the channel. We are going to get to Nick Fuentes and what he explained on his show, why he says Hitler is cool. Hey, I'm new here. Can you give me a quick, short overview about your view on current politics? I'm assuming. Yes. Hey, glad you're new here. Subscribe to the channel if you're new here. I would greatly appreciate it. Yeah, a little bit about the show. Hey, I am a Christian nationalist. I really focus on Illinois politics. You guys can see my logo up there, the Conservative Cat Show. I focus on Illinois politics just because it's fascinating to me, and I lived there most of my life. I just recently escaped Pritzker Stan, as I like to call it, very recently, like a week ago. So I escaped, but Republicans, Democrats, in Illinois, there's no difference, really. There was a law actually where they had passed it. They're trying to give Narcan to people in public libraries because public libraries are largely irrelevant. We have books on Kindles now, and you can literally at the tap of a button read anything you want on Google. But they're trying to innovate and, find a reason to give $25 million, for example, in Bloomington Normal. They gave $25 million to a public library to, reinvent itself or whatever the hell. They're trying to justify paying all of their friends who serve in these public libraries by reinventing libraries, public libraries, which just go obsolete. And they are giving out Narcan to individuals who are overdosing on opioids. You can go there and go get your fix of Narcan if you're overdosing. Yeah, that's going to go over real great. Hey, I'm taking little Susie. We're going to go pick up a book, okay, at the public library. And little Susie, she's 5 years old. She walks in and then she sees somebody, tripping on opioids or whatever. I don't know if tripping is the right word for heroin use or whatever. But then, 60-year-old granny, Democrat who watches NBC on a loop, comes over and hits, Jamal with a huge dose of Narcan to try to save his life. Yeah, that sounds wonderful. All the Illinois Republicans voted for that in the state house, all of them. So I don't know if I would necessarily call myself a Republican if that's what a Republican does, right? I vote Republican, and I am all about the Republican platform as far as my politics go. But in certain states, with certain individuals leading the party, I would kind of steer away from calling myself a Republican. I would say Christian conservative in that order, traditionalist. Yes, I don't believe that women should be voting. Yes, I believe that per capita, blacks definitely commit more crime. And hey, if you are a statistics person, a crime statistics person, yeah, you should fear somebody sitting on a subway wearing a hoodie black and not sit down next to that person. Irina Zarutska, she made that mistake. So yeah, I mean, I have pretty far right views, but I use scripture. That's the purpose of this show, is using scripture to back up those views. So I want to actually talk about this, Nick Fuentes and the Hitler thing. I'm a Christian Zionist. Holocaust was awful. He was a monster, Hitler. And I don't think Nick was praising extremists here, political extremists like Hitler, or endorsing historical villains. Darth Vader is cool. Okay. Cool is very different from I like this guy. Okay. And to a degree, like, Hitler had to be cool in order to take control of an entire country. He had to have some sort of charisma. Okay. What Nick is talking about here is something much deeper, and something that young men feel, but they can't quite articulate. So I want to play this clip. This is of Nick Fuentes, and he goes on into why he says Hitler is cool. And Piers Morgan, during the interview, did not want to talk about this. He just wanted to kind of trip Nick up and say, like, oh, you think Hitler's cool. Most people would agree that genocide is wrong. And if you don't, you're a scumbag, like, obviously, right? But what Nick is doing here is he's talking about a culture of forced guilt. I talked about it earlier in the show where, and I don't know why Nick doesn't believe in Zionism, that, hey, Israel should exist as a Jewish state, just much like America should exist as a Christian nation. You know what? Somalia exists as a Muslim nation. And really, it's all laid out for you in Genesis, like in the beginning of the Bible, Tower of Babel. Unity, you know, is dangerous. And God saw that. And he broke us up and gave us all different languages. And he's a God of nations and sovereignty. Okay, and I'll get to Genesis and break that down. But first, I do want to play this clip. I'll play some of it. This one's 25 minutes long, but I'm not going to play all of it. I'll just play some of it. But he responds to his claim that, hey, Hitler is cool. Take a listen.
I want to talk a little bit about Hitler because he got really hung up on Hitler. And he asked me, do I affirm the Holocaust? Do I think Hitler is cool? And he got all bent out of shape. He said, I don't think Hitler is really cool. I think he's really a monster. And he's the worst mass murderer and this, that, and the other. And, you know, he asked me, what is it about Hitler that's cool? And I said, well, the edits, these video edits of Hitler set to music. They show the parades, the military, the speeches, the charisma. And that's just true. That's why I think it's cool. But after the interview, I was thinking to myself, why is Hitler cool? Because he definitely is. And when I say cool, I'm not saying he's good. I'm not saying he's great or anything like that. I'm saying he's cool. Darth Vader is cool. Hitler is cool. He's cool. When you watch the videos, well, you sort of have to be cool. How do you win the absolute allegiance of a nation of millions if you're not cool? If you don't have an X quality? I don't think anyone would deny that he's a charismatic speaker, a visionary, imaginative, that sort of thing, whether for good or for bad. Most would say bad, of course. But he's certainly cool. And I was thinking, because I saw a lot of the edits after the interview, people took that clip where I said, well, the edits, and then they spliced it with a Hitler edit, a hype edit where there's Euro pop music, techno music blasting, and it's the tanks and it's the speeches. And I was thinking, what is it about Hitler that's cool? Why does it tickle? Because kids love Hitler. Kids love Hitler. Young men see the edits. It's edgy. It's transgressive. There's something that feels naughty and dark about it, but there's also something electrifying about it. There's something sort of interesting. And I was thinking to myself with introspection, why is it cool? And here's why. Why is Hitler cool? I'll tell you why very simply. Because what Hitler represents is if white people didn't give a fuck. That's what it represents. When you see Hitler, when you see the edit.
Okay, so I do want to share like what he's talking about when he says edits. This is what he's talking about. And I don't get a tickle from him, maybe because I'm not a man. I don't get like an adrenaline, but it's fascinating. I don't know if I'd say cool, but I mean, maybe it's the same word. I don't know. It's very interesting. Hitler's rise to power, and he had to have some sort of charisma in order to do that. That's what Nick is talking about here. He's getting past this, okay, condemning Hitler, and he's getting past that, and he's talking about why young men get like this adrenaline rush when they see things like this. And I want to share this with you. This is like the edits that he's talking about, and these float around on social media all the time.
He murdered 12 million people. He murdered 12 million people. What is very fucking cool about that? Tell me.
The edits.
Okay. And like I said, I'm a Christian Zionist. I know over 6 million Jews died, genocide. Hitler was a terrible person, a monster, as Piers would say. But Nick's point here is his point stripped of all the shock value. Okay. Nick is a very shock type jock. say he's got the bumper sticker and then he explains what he means. That's what most podcasters do. If you guys, just went through the Conservative Cat Show and clipped things like I said, oh, women, shouldn't be voting. Somebody could clip that and be like, she's a misogynist or anti-woman or whatever. Yeah, of course, but you strip it of all of its shock value when Nick says Hitler's cool. Here's what he's saying. Young people are desperate for a country that is thriving. Young people are desperate for a country that doesn't feel ashamed of itself for simply existing. Have we done horrible things? Western culture, European, Christopher Columbus, the Pilgrims, were they like, I would argue that they were the heroes. But were they sinless? Absolutely not. That's not what we're saying, that they aren't sinless. But we shouldn't feel ashamed from where we come from. And I've done Thanksgiving shows, the true meaning of Thanksgiving or the true story of Thanksgiving, how the Pilgrims came over here, left the church. And this is where Nick and I disagree is, he's a Catholic, I'm Protestant, leaving this Church of England, to freely worship, things like that. I don't believe that Nick is like a theocracy, pro-theocracy. I don't believe that he's pro-theocracy, but is of the belief that there's this new covenant and the old covenant was replaced by the new covenant and all of that. So there's differences between Nick Fuentes and I for sure. But what Nick is describing here is that we've lost our identity. We've lost pride. We've lost our heritage, and we've lost meaning. Why? Because every other country in the world, if you go to Somalia, you've got to adapt to the cultural norms. If you don't, you're going to get your hands chopped off. Okay, or in Yemen, if you're, going over there and you're eating a burger and, you're doing American things over there, you are going to get in trouble. It's because everywhere else in the world, they have this sense of pride, heritage, and identity. And we've lost that. People today, they're not searching for a Hitler. Okay. They're searching for backbone, and they're searching for somebody to come out and say like, hey, what Christopher Columbus did, what the Pilgrims did, this is all really fascinating stuff. Did Christopher Columbus engage in war and kill people? Yeah. Did the Pilgrims kill people? Yeah. But just because they have sin doesn't mean that we should be ashamed. And that's what the new covenant is all about. That's what Jesus Christ is all about, is not to live in your shame and guilt. So we live in a time where strength is treated like toxicity. It's toxic to be strong. It's toxic to want to be a mother. It's oppression to want to stay home, to not vote, and to have more political influence in the home as a woman rather than out there in the lines for the ballot box. Masculinity is treated like a disease. Patriotism is treated like extremism. Like, you can't even hang here in the United States a flag outside your house without people saying, I bet that guy's a Republican. What the hell? Like, where's our sense of pride and our unity as a country? Okay, now I want to get to Genesis, and I will. But the media wonders why we're all so frustrated and why young men are frustrated. Nick, he gives a voice to these frustrated young men. It's raw, it's unpolished, might be controversial, yes, but it's a voice of frustration. And whether you agree with him or not, he's speaking to a reality that the establishment refuses to acknowledge. Okay, and this is why his conversation with Piers blew up. Young Americans are starving for someone, anyone, who isn't terrified to say these things out loud, the things that they feel every single day, that they've got no pride in their country, and they say that pride is wrong, or pride in your country is wrong. And Piers, came into that interview and he was trying to embarrass Nick. Really, what he came off as a guy who doesn't understand the country anymore. We're not living in 2015. Your insults of racism and misogyny and homophobia or whatever, they don't sting like they used to. We're sick and tired of the wokeness that men can participate in female sports. We're sick and tired of pretending that, the crime statistics aren't there, that Black men are stabbing young white women in the neck, okay, and that's not a reality, a statistical reality, and I'm sorry, but this boomer, he's just not understanding the new generation, Piers Morgan. They are too busy talking about tampons and how I'd give a tampon to a female friend. That's weird. Do you not live in reality? Young men giving tampons to females. That's so weird. Okay. And they pretend that math is racist, that per capita Black men commit crimes and are violent. They want to pretend that the math is racist here. But Nick didn't win because he's a perfect guy, a sinless guy. I don't agree with a lot of his really theology. I think that's where we differ a lot. But really, Nick won here, this debate with Piers Morgan, because he refused to play by their script. You can call me a racist and misogynist. Okay, but then what? Okay, I'm racist. You got me to admit it. Everyone's racist. Okay, so what? Now what? Okay. So Genesis, I want to get to this. And it kind of fits into our story here about this church in this nativity scene. I'm going to shift gears. It was a Chicago church. They zip-tied Jesus, put gas masks on Mary and Joseph, and, it was all in protest. It was a disgusting protest against Trump and ICE or whatever the hell. But here's what Genesis 11:6 says. Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do, and nothing they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language so that they may not understand one another's speech. Okay, so this is in Genesis, Tower of Babel. It gives us a clear warning in scripture about what happens when mankind gets a little too full of themselves in this multiculturalism thing, and we all start to unify, and all culture is the same, and we're unified. God looks down at the Tower of Babel. Humanity, united under one language, one purpose. And what's that purpose? It wasn't to worship, and it wasn't obedience to God. No, it was, let's make a name for ourselves. That was what the Tower of Babel was all about. It was humanity in pure pride. And what God did was break that all up. And, if this is how they act when they all speak one language, they are, nothing they plan will be impossible for them. So they all rise together against God. So what he did, confused their language, and he broke up this unity. Okay. And that is why God is a God of nations and sovereignty and various languages. And he did this out of mercy, because when people unite in rebellion, the train goes off the tracks very fast. So this was a way of God knocking these projects down. Think about it today. Every time humans try to build a giant system without God, you've got things like global government, global censorship, global surveillance. We're all the same, and all cultures are the same. And it becomes a tower of pride, human against God. And this was God's way of knocking that down, and knocking that project down before it would destroy us. And he simply broke it all up, because unity without God is organized rebellion. Okay, and God stepped in here to protect us from our own arrogance, and he built nations. So Israel should be a Jewish nation. America should be a Christian nation. Okay. That was our founding. So Genesis 11:6-7 is the original reminder that human pride builds towers, and this unity without God is rebellion. And God intended nations to be separate. Okay, so this brings me to the story here in Chicago. I actually think I've seen this church before. It's in Evanston. Evanston is a nightmare. I understand that we can all have different beliefs about deportations and the efforts that the Trump administration their efforts to deport people. We all have mixed feelings or viewpoints about this, okay? But can we leave Jesus out of it and the nativity story out of it? Because this was a disgusting pursuit to prove a point to the Trump administration. We have a woke pastor, and he decided to mock the birth of Jesus by putting zip ties on baby Jesus and putting a gas mask on Mary. Let me share with you this. So 1 minute clip. And here's the nativity outside of Evanston.
A unique nativity display featuring Roman centurions dressed as ICE agents and Mary wearing a gas mask is attracting attention.
Jesus was born into a context into the Roman Empire, right? I mean, people under subjugation, and he immediately has to go into exile and flee and become a refugee into Egypt.
The display puts Mary and Jesus in modern times, with the Christ child wearing zip ties on its plaster hands.
Our baby Jesus has zip ties on his hands because that's an actual incident that happened in our city. These are real world things that are happening, and we're trying to depict them and bring the sacred into it to tell a story.
Walk with love! That story playing out not only in front of the Evanston church, but also in the streets of Broadview, where Pastor Michael Wolf was among those arrested while protesting in front of the ICE processing facility. He was in court this morning.
When we see injustice being perpetrated against our siblings, we must stand with them.
I'm proud of what I did that day. If the state wants to call what I did illegal, that's what they allege.
We've reached out to Homeland Security, which so far has had no comment on this unique protest.
Jesus Christ, is born on this sort of Christmas holiday and everything that we're thinking about with nativities. Jesus Christ is also born into our hearts and our lives in the midst of this suffering, and that new light can come and that there is really hope out there.
Blasphemy. Okay, so notice how he said right before this
on this unique protest.
Jesus Christ, is born on this sort of Christmas holiday.
On this sort of Christmas holiday? Sort of Christmas holiday? No, he's born on Christmas, okay? Sort of Christmas holiday. I don't know what he was saying there, but take a listen to this.
And everything that we're thinking about with nativities, Jesus Christ is also born into our hearts and our lives.
Not true. Jesus Christ is not born into our hearts and lives. So we are not inherently, you have to choose Jesus. That is how I know that this pastor is just blasphemous and woke and is not a true shepherd. Okay, I don't think anybody is been brought into his cause here because of his little nativity display or his protest. Zero. That is how many. No more, no less. Nobody cares about your stupid little protest. You didn't change hearts and minds. Now, according to the New York Post, this Illinois church is facing criticism for displaying a nativity scene that depicts baby Jesus with zip ties around his hands and guarded by figures styled as immigration agents. Sorry. This is just funny. I don't know. Lake Street Church in Evanston. And I've actually drove by this church, I think, because they've got a huge pride flag. Anyway, so they displayed the scene outside on the grounds there. Baby Jesus wrapped in a thin blanket resembling aluminum foil, which the church said is in reference to the emergency blankets used at the detention facilities, which is kind, by the way. And like zip ties, also kind. I think handcuffs are probably more uncomfortable than the zip ties. I don't know. I've never been tied up with zip ties. I have tried handcuffs. Police, they came to our school and when I was young, and they let us use the handcuffs. It was really fun. Those are tight and those can hurt. But the zip ties, the reason why ICE agents use the zip ties, it's not like an inhumane thing. They just have quite literally run out of handcuffs because Joe Biden's open border let everybody in, right? So they're saving taxpayer dollars using the zip ties. It's probably more comfortable than a handcuff, I would imagine, but I don't know. Anyway, the birth story of Jesus has nothing to do with this. Nothing. Okay. And I don't know what point they're trying to prove. Yes, they fled King Herod. Mary and Joseph had the baby in Nazareth. Yes. No, Bethlehem. Sorry. Bethlehem. And you can try to prove whatever point you want to make here with this nativity story, but it's truly deranged. And I don't think Jesus would appreciate what you're doing here, man. So these masked officers, they're the centurions, the officers in the ancient Roman army. They're depicted in sunglasses and green vest here in the nativity scene, and they're wearing like ICE labels. And then they show Mother Mary. She's wearing a respirator mask to protect herself from the tear gas, according to the church. Joseph was also masked. In a Facebook post, the church said that the installation reimagines the nativity as a scene of forced family separation, drawing parallels between the Holy Family's refugee flight and modern immigration detention practices. So they're trying to say like Jesus was a refugee, Mary was a refugee. Okay, at that time, nations weren't exactly a thing, and then they came back for the census. So total bogus. Okay, and I don't know what they're trying to convince people of here. That Jesus would be pro open borders. I just told you about Genesis. No, God is a God of nations and sovereignty. And they weren't really immigrants. Okay, they weren't immigrating there. They were fleeing, which, hey, here in America, we actually have things like asylum claims. If you're fleeing religious persecution or political persecution, we allow for that sort of thing. It's called an asylum claim. But what ICE is doing, carrying out these deportations, these aren't people who are seeking asylum. These are people who are overstaying work visas, who sought asylum, but under false pretenses. They went to various other countries prior to getting here, and really they just came here for economic prosperity. And that economic prosperity is really derived from our choice in being a Christian nation and choosing God. That's where that economic prosperity comes from. That's why Somalia, they don't have that economic prosperity because they didn't choose the one true God. Okay. Yahweh, Jesus. So Jesus would not be pro open borders. They weren't even really immigrants at the time because there weren't like what you would call modern day borders today. Okay. And they were truly like fleeing. And like, this is something in the Bible that had to happen prophetically. Okay. And the church here is trying to say, oh, well, that shouldn't have happened. Just like, the modern immigration detention practices shouldn't be happening today. No, that had to happen. King Herod going after babies. And it's so fascinating. These same people probably wouldn't say, killing babies is a bad thing. Okay. King Herod, killing babies, Pharaoh, same thing. Hebrew children, killing Hebrew children. Moses, he goes out onto the river. This is like a motif in the Bible where these dictators, they go after children. But nobody talks about abortion, right? And how the killing of children en masse, in the masses, they don't want to talk about that, but they'll talk about this. And when you read the Bible, you understand that this had to happen prophetically. And what they're doing here is they're suggesting that that shouldn't happen just like this modern immigration detention practices, that those shouldn't happen either. So it's truly just blasphemous. God established borders, as I said, and nations. And, we can show compassion through things like asylum claims. But under the Biden administration, asylum wasn't truly asylum. And by definition, our federal law says, hey, true asylum claim would be you flee from Somalia, say that you didn't want to enter a cousin marriage, because over there they have 60% of their marriages are cousin marriages or incestual type marriages. Say you're a woman in Somalia, you don't want to marry your cousin, you flee, okay, because that's political. They're trying to force you into a marriage. You can flee to the United States, but what people were doing was not that. You had Romanian, Venezuelan immigrants fleeing to Mexico first and then jumping the border, okay, and not seeking asylum the legal way. Okay, so that's very different. And our federal law says you have to go to the United States. Okay, so you have to go from Somalia to the United States. You don't get to go through the Mexican southern border. Okay, so yeah, we know that the left wants chaos, no borders at all. We know that God wants no harm. He is not a God of chaos. He is a God of order, which is why in Genesis he destroys this human unity and collectivism. So I don't know why what this pastor, and clearly he says that Jesus is born into our hearts. What the hell? Like, no, Jesus is a choice. You make a personal choice to profess Jesus as Christ and Lord over your life. So he realizes that Mary and Jesus, they were not illegal immigrants. Okay. That's just not what was going on there. They traveled away from King Herod, but they're trying to distort that and make it appear like they're illegal immigrants. No, they were fleeing the orders. And this was prophetic, where they had to flee for this child to be born. So, like I said, Genesis 11:6-7, Tower of Babel. God says that, hey, you guys aren't supposed to speak the same language. I want you guys to speak different languages. He sets up nations, builds nations, because a giant system without God, this unity, okay, this no borders thing, it leads to things like global government, global censorship, global surveillance. And really, we are building a tower of pride. And God knocked that down in Genesis. So the message is very simple. Unity without God is organized rebellion. And unifying and erasing our borders is not what God would want. God intended for nations to be separate. And the sooner that this pastor realizes that, and actually cracks open the Bible and reads it, which I'm of the belief that he probably has never really read it, because he wouldn't have said the thing that he did. Jesus is born into our hearts. You have to accept Jesus into your heart. So he's not born there. Like, you're not inherently born with salvation. You have to ask for it. Ask for Jesus to come into your heart and life. So beware of sheep in wolf's clothing. Beware of people like this and pastors like this. Okay. Smash that like button, share this out with your friend. I will get to Mayor Brandon Johnson here. I've got one more story for you, because he was asked a question, and this is fascinating because I love the Chris Kindle Mart in Chicago. I've gone a few times. So what they've done is they've limited the capacity for people to go to the Chris Kindle Mart out of a public safety thing. They're saying for public safety reasons, we're going to limit how many people can actually go. And vendors are concerned about that. People who are running the Christkindl Mart. Obviously, they want as many people to come so they can make money. And this reporter simply asked, like, hey, why are you more concerned about this Christkindl Mart? Like, when there's Black teenagers taking over stores and shooting people on a regular basis. Like, aren't you going to go after those Black teenagers, these teen takeovers that are going on in Chicago, Mayor Brandon Johnson? Why are you so concerned with the Christkindl market? So Mayor Brandon Johnson, he, of course, resorted to insults. He danced around the question when the reporter asked him why he's not doing anything about the teen violence in the city. Smash that like button, share this out with your friends. I'm going to take a brief break. Listen, Conservative Cat.
Down state
and we are back. Thank you so much.
Shows your priorities. What do you say to those?
Let me fix this. Sorry about that. I started playing it. This is the clip. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson and this reporter, William J. Kelly. He's a friend of the show, been on before multiple times. He's great. He's doing the job when nobody else will up there in Chicago. Now, according to the Post Millennial, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson lashed out at a reporter, calling him disgusting and racist for asking a simple question about teen violence, specifically Black teen violence, which statistically, it's Black teens committing the violence. Like, I don't know what you want from me. Like, are you mad that I called out that this is happening among the Black teen community? I don't understand it. The altercation occurred during a press briefing when independent reporter William J. Kelly challenged Mayor Johnson on his public safety priorities. Kelly asked the following question: why is it you think that the Christmas market across the street from City Hall, okay, the police should be there, like a police presence somewhat should be there. And they've got like capacity limits on how many people can enter this market. And he goes, shouldn't you be more concerned about Black teenagers running down State Street, shooting people at a Christmas tree lighting? Shows your priorities. What do you say to the concerned citizens? Here's what he says.
That you think that a Christmas market across the street from City Hall is more a threat to public safety than violent Black teenagers running down State Street, shooting people at a Christmas tree lighting shows your priorities. What do you say to those people, citizens, Black, brown, business leaders? What do you say to those people?
Got it.
Yeah. That if they get a phone call from you or they get an interaction with you, they should avoid you. I'm not going to entertain because the whole premise of everything that you bring up is not only disgusting and racist. Really? It does no facts to it. In fact, so check this out. I actually hired 36,000 people work for the city of Chicago right now. So I do know what it's like to run a major operation. I have the biggest corporation right now in the city of Chicago right now. So thank you very much. And I'm going to close with this. There is not a person in this city who spends more time working to ensure that we're protecting working people. There's not a person that spends more time thinking about it. In fact, our budget reflects that. My values reflect that. You would do yourself good service by actually showing up in this room with some level of integrity as well as some honesty. You don't operate in any of that. So thank you.
So he just insulted the reporter. Okay, someone should really inform him about what the word racism means. I mean, the reporter William J. Kelly simply pointed out that Black teen violence is the problem, not the Christkindl market, and the people attending the Christkindl market, and capacity limits. It's right across the street from City Hall. Why aren't you concerned about State Street, where there's shooting happened, where Black teens shot people? So somebody needs to inform him on what racism really is. Okay, pointing out statistical realities is not racist, as we pointed out with the Nick Fuentes interview, actually. Nonetheless, why can he not answer the question about the crucial need for public safety? Why do Chicago leftists refuse to admit that there is a crime problem in the city, especially among the youth, particularly Black youth? So much so that, they refuse to admit it, so much so that they would rather slander someone, call them misogynist, call them racist. They'd slander anyone who questions these concerns. Okay, that's what's going on here. He's slandering him. He's calling him racist. Clearly, people like Johnson despise law-abiding citizens. And time again, the left refuses to acknowledge the problem. The problem is Black teens. Okay, it's not racist to want to hold officials accountable. Hey, what do you say to concerned citizens who are, really confused about why you're limiting capacity at the Chris Kindle Market rather than going after these Black teenagers in the streets? It's not racist to want to hold your officials accountable and ask them to respond to concerned citizens. Real racism is coming from those who don't do anything about this, okay? Because the Black teenagers often are committing crimes against other Black teens or Black people, right? I mean, does he not care about those people, Brandon? Like, do you not care about the Black victims? He doesn't. Obviously, it appears he doesn't, and we can only assume he's more racist than anybody could ever imagine, because he refuses to address the Black teen violence that is killing more Black people than the Chris Kindle Market and the number of people. So the Chicago Chris Kindle Market has faced public safety discussions. The city has imposed capacity limits, like I said, and that's concerning vendors because they can't make money. The reporter's question here, he says, the tree lighting ceremony, this was in Millennium Park. 14-year-old boy was fatally shot. 8 other teenagers between the ages of 13 and 17 were wounded when the gathering of hundreds of youths escalated into riots. And there were 2 separate shootings along State Street. And this was on November 21st. So that's what the reporter was referencing here. This is not normal. Okay, this is certainly something that shouldn't be happening in America. This is a very serious issue. A teen boy has been taken away from this planet. Okay. And the officials refuse to acknowledge the problem, which is the Black teen violence. They're prioritizing this Chris Kindle Market, which isn't a problem. Okay, so it's pathetic. He won't even acknowledge the problem, address the problem. It's grossly negligent. And this attitude is only going to continue. It's only going to allow these types of incidents to continue to happen. So it's pathetic. Also, he kind of mentioned there in the clip that he controls things and that he operates a huge operation there. And, it's these classic liberals, these theater kids who think that they, entered the public sector and I'm important, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you're not managing anybody, dude. There's a city manager. That position exists. Okay, you didn't create anything. You're not operating anything. You're not like this leader. Okay, he's extremely arrogant, delusional, and he hasn't done anything of significance or beneficial for the community in Chicago. So yeah, that's my take on Brandon Johnson. I think that's going to do it for the show today. I appreciate you being here. Real quick, I'll address some of your comments. You're an apologist, sympathizer with a racist misogynist. He wasn't joking. He's dead serious about being both. Isn't that what the left wants, dude? Like, you want us to admit that we're racist and that we're misogynist. Okay, I'm racist. I'm misogynist. We all fall short. Okay, now what? How are we going to address this? Okay, like, I'm just so done with the left. You're racist. Yeah, we all are. You are. Okay. I just don't get it. I don't agree with him on theological philosophy, Nick Fuentes. He's a Catholic. I'm a Protestant. I'm a Christian Zionist. He's not a Zionist, which is fascinating. It's kind of conflicts with this idea of nationalism. I think that all nations should choose to worship their religion and speak their language, have their culture. Ours is superior, in my opinion. And why you wouldn't want the Jews to have their Jewish state, Israel, I don't know. It's probably because he believes in this replacement theology, the New Testament or the New Covenant replacing the Old Covenant. Jesus said very clearly in the Bible, I didn't come to replace the prophets and law, I came to fulfill them. So a covenant is an agreement. God fulfills his promise. He's a promise keeper. And this was an old covenant that he's still fulfilling today. And that's evident by history, clearly, with Israel coming back and the Jewish people overcoming things like the Holocaust. But yeah, I don't think that Nick is truly like, he says he's racist as much as you and I are racist, in that we both, everybody wants a nation because the Bible kind of commands it. Everybody kind of wants their own nation because God set it up that way. He built nations. And that's not like, I don't even understand the whole racist. You're racist. Hey, what does that even mean anymore? All right. Smash that like button, share this out, and subscribe to the channel. We'll be back tomorrow morning, bright and early, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. Central Time. You've been listening to the Conservative Cat Show. Always support the program. Send your super chats. I usually take some at the end of the show. You can also support the program by visiting patriotpumpenergy.com and getting your bottle of premium pre-workout using promo code ConservativeCat. See you tomorrow.